The September formal meeting of the Osborne School District Governing Board, and I've called this meeting to order. Go ahead and let's stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next we have our land acknowledgement statement, which I'll go ahead and do. Arizona is home to 22 tribal nations. Osborne School District is situated on the homelands of the Acoma, O'odham, and Peepash people. The Osborne School District recognizes the original inhabitants of these lands and recognizes they still reside throughout the city of Phoenix. We recognize their wisdom, impact, and generosity towards us. Osborne School District is surrounded by the original Salt River canals that were constructed by the ancestral Sonoran Desert people, the Hohokam. These canals created a livelihood for the people and are still in use today. We acknowledge the modern indigenous people that inhabit this area as well as their Sonoran Desert ancestors, the Hohokam. Okay, moving on. You might see that it feels a little bare up here. Unfortunately, Dr. Robert is ill and couldn't be here today. So you got to kind of make do with me. Also, Violetta couldn't make it either. And we are in the process right now of filling a vacant seat, which we're going to talk about here in a bit. So I don't know about you, Luis, it feels a little bare up here, but we've got a quorum and we will press on. First on the agenda is our district celebrations and announcements. We have one item for celebration today in years, as well as having 2 children come through the Osborne School District Governing Board, one of whom is here today. Yeah, we won't make you stand up. And we are so honored to have Elenia as now our former colleague, and her service to this school district and to our governing board will never be forgotten. So we want to take this opportunity. I know Dr. Robert wishes he could be here and probably is burned up that he couldn't be here. But we want to take this opportunity to call you up. I got a couple of gifts and wanted to give you an opportunity to say a few things, if you can, if you'd be so kind.
It's a true honor to serve the families in the community and the staff of the Osborne School District. Both of my kids received an excellent education. Very proud of not only my children, but all the children who come through here, and so grateful for the opportunity. It's the most rewarding experience I've had, and I wouldn't be where I'm at without this incredible experience. And yeah, the Osborne community will always have a special place in my heart, as it does for my children, and I will always advocate for our community. So thank you for this opportunity to share and to serve. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, and appreciate your continued service to our community, of course, on the Central Arizona Water Conservation District Governing Board. And as has been said in these walls before, one of the reasons, of course, your kids are a main driver of your involvement, but also you're very well known as having a green thumb and helping with our community gardens. So we wanted to get a little present for you, which is this tree over here. And we want to present it to you as well as a card just to say our eternal gratitude for all of your service. So we're going to present you with this tree and the card, and take just a quick minute or two to snap a photo with Brendan here. So thank you so much. If you guys want to come up and we'll present that.
Thank you.
certainly will. Okay. Moving on to our consent agenda. Any questions, items that want to be requested to be removed, or other issues as to our consent agenda? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It does pass 3-0. Okay. Moving on to call to the public. Lisa, do we have anybody in the call to the public?
No.
Okay. Moving on to board presentation. Mariah, we're zipping right through here. So our board presentation is from Mariah Kelly Hatcher, who will present information regarding our current special education offerings, updates about the special education programming, celebrations, and continued goals for our Osborne School District. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, President and Governing Board. I was going to make a presentation, but Brendan is no longer here. So
We're making him work hard today. We can take a beat if Brendan needs to catch up.
I think we're good. So when Dr. Robert asked me to make this presentation, I thought about different ways that we could approach it. But as I was going to create some slides in Canva, I saw the presentation that I actually gave at my interview in 2021. So a really unique part of my interview was talking about how I envisioned bringing or furthering our goals of equity in Osborne Student Services, specifically with our special education population. So what I did is I took those slides, which were kind of bare bone, and then I looked at what have we done over the past 3 years towards those goals. So the other thing that I really love about this presentation is that when I created it, it had a bunch of stock images of different students, but I'm now able to have our students from across the district featured in this as well. So just keep a little eye out for them. It did work. All right, Brendan. Okay. So the first goal that I had in 2021 was building equity through hiring highly qualified teachers and assistants. We have been, especially pretty much my entire career in Osborne, we've had trouble finding teachers just due to the teacher shortage and retaining our teachers. So that was something that was really important for me because that especially was true for our special education teachers. Brendan, thank you. So I'm pleased to say we've reduced the number of underqualified teachers and increased the number of direct hires. So what I did is I looked at the last 3 years. So in 2021, only 75% of our special education teachers were special education certified. Last year, we looked at 79%, and then this year we're at 90% of our special education teachers being special education certified. So either having a full SPED credential or in a program to become fully credentialed as well. Go back. Sorry, we clearly did not practice this and this worked before. The other thing that we're really proud of is the number of direct hires. So in the past, because of that teacher shortage, we would often have to lean on staffing agencies and contracting teachers. This year, both thankfully budgetarily and also because we know what's best for our kids, we were able to have a fully directly hired teaching staff. All right. Just a couple of other things we've done toward that goal of having those highly qualified professionals working with our kiddos. We previously had a classification called health aide, which was essentially someone who was a paraprofessional but did not meet the full qualifications that the state has set for an official paraprofessional. We eliminated that because it was our goal to bring the most highly qualified individuals working with our district, which means that everyone who is currently in a paraprofessional position either has 60 college credits, has an AA, or has passed the paraprofessional exam. So that's something that we were really focused on because we wanted to make sure that our kids had high quality assistance in addition to our teachers. We also have created systems of regular professional development. We began having monthly special education meetings, which have featured different types of professional development. I'll talk a little bit more about what our focus has been this school year further on in the presentation. And another big highlight is this past year, our C's program moved over to Longview, and we were able to hire a social worker to lead that program, which is wonderful just for the leadership, but then also to help meet those special social and emotional needs that those students present. Another goal we had was analyzing data, focusing on proportionality and opportunity, because we know our special education students, although they are a smaller part of our community, they are often overrepresented in areas we don't want them to be, or underrepresented in areas that we really want them to have more opportunity. So some things we've been doing in order to build on that is this last year we did a redistribution of need, and we added some classes. So what you see up here are the different schools and the class offerings that we have. I also highlighted just a couple of ones that are a little bit different. So in this last school year, partially because of our staffing challenges and then also student need, we weren't able to separate our RISE, what's called our RISE program, which is for our students who have are impacted cognitively, a lot of our students who have like an intellectual disability. So that classroom last year was a K-5 classroom, which is a really big challenge for a teacher to be teaching that range as a self-contained classroom. So we were really excited this year to be able to split that program up so that they're with their age mates. With that move, we ended up moving those classrooms from Longview, because that was one class at Longview. It's now split between Encanto and Clarendon. What we were really excited about was matching student need and caseloads with the size of the school and with the grade levels that were served. So our two comprehensive campuses, so Longview and Solano, you'll notice they have more special education self-contained classrooms, and that's just due to the fact that they are a larger physical campus, and they're able to access a lot of those resources that a smaller campus may not be able to. However, we did increase the number of self-contained classrooms at Encanto and Clarendon, so that, again, there's that breadth of support that can be given with a smaller number of self-contained classrooms than we had previously. The stars next to them are, again, RISE 2 was added, so we split that RISE class into 2 classrooms. This year we also have students, so what's really important is our Montessori program is a public Montessori program, so that means that we're going to have students with special needs. And so we do currently have a caseload of about 4 students who receive resource support, and then I think 2 that receive occupational therapy, and 3 that receive speech language support. So that was something we were really excited to do. We are able to do that because our preschool SLP services those students, because she's housed out of Montecito. And then our resource teacher from Longview travels to Montecito to provide those services as well. The last one to highlight is the laser classroom. For years we had kind of this place where we didn't have a place for some of our students. So we have these students who had been in a self-contained setting when they were in elementary school, but they weren't incredibly impacted to the fact where they needed to be in a self-contained setting at all times, but we didn't have a spot for them to exist in both being in a partially self-contained and then splitting out to a couple classes, because it is really overwhelming for a kid who's been any 6th grader going into middle school and then having to juggle a full schedule. So what we were able to do was create this laser classroom, which serves our students who need help transitioning out into the general education environment. So these kiddos might be with this teacher all day. They may also, go out to English, because that's something that they are excelling in, and we know it's best for them to be with their gen ed peers in that case. So there's just a little bit more flexibility with that classroom, which is something that we have been looking for since probably before I was a special education teacher at OMS. So we were really excited to be able to add that classroom. Last year was the first year, and then This is our second year, and we have Mr. Cody Cooper in that classroom, and he's been loving it so far. So that's been wonderful. Just a couple of other things. We talked about this a little bit incidentally at the board retreat, but we have reduced our numbers of students who participate in MSAA, so that alternative assessment, because we've really applied strict criteria to ensure that students who are taking that alternative assessment are the ones who truly qualify for it, rather than an over-identification, which we had seen in the past. We also have increased the opportunities for integration with general education classrooms. COVID really their grade level peers, any specials. So it's not just them going and being lumped in with a general education class or separate, receiving their specials separately. They now are split out with their gen ed peers to ensure that they're having more of those developmental peers and role models. All right. The next piece I talked about was implementing MTSS interventions effectively. And so a couple of things we did. So the reason this was really important to me when we're looking at equity for special education is that in some districts and in the past, a lot of people saw MTSS as a pathway towards special education. Like, these are the checks that we're gonna check off, and then we can get this kid evaluated. And so that's something that our district has said, like, that's not what MTSS is. MTSS is really providing
Mariah,
students.
could you remind me, what does MTSS stand for? Okay.
Yes, multi-tiered system of supports.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
So it's our process of interventions. We tier, students exist kind of in a tiered space. So tier 1 is our everybody. So everybody, including our special education students, is tier 1. It's what everybody gets in order to be able to succeed. As students have higher needs, they move into tier 2. They might have some pull-out interventions. They might have just some extra supports that are added. From there, there's tier 3. So our students who still aren't being successful getting tier 1 and tier 2 supports, they might have additional time where they're in a smaller group, or they might be one-on-one in certain cases, getting those additional supports. And it can be for academics or for behavior. From there, if they're still not being successful, and we've tried multiple interventions and we've looked at different ways to help a student, then we might look at opening an evaluation for special education. But our goal is to meet students' needs at those other tiers so that we aren't over-identifying our students, and we're really making sure they get their supports. So related to that, thank you for having me slow down and explain that.
There's a lot of acronyms, and I know a lot of them, but not all of them.
Yes. So what's great about that and collaborating with the curriculum department and making sure that our whole district has that same perspective is that helped us we established what's called our least restrictive environment committee to assist our IEP teams in examining multiple options of service. So sometimes what would happen in the past is we would have a kid and we would be like, this kid just needs more, so let's go ahead and move them to a more restrictive environment. But we were finding that not all of the decisions were based on data or had measurable data that we could point to. So to what we call our least restrictive environment committee to present the idea that maybe the student needs a more restrictive environment. The way that works, though, is it isn't just like, here's my data, and now my child is going to go from a level B, which is a less restrictive environment, to a level C or level D. Instead, the LRE committee then reviews the information that's presented, collaborates. So the LRE committee is made up of Ms. Potter Davis, myself, so 2 district representatives, one of our 2 special education TOSAs who have kind of a broad view of the entire district, and then a school psychologist from a different school site than the student is currently existing on. The whole purpose of that is to get different eyes on problems that they might be encountering, because the student might not need a more restrictive environment. They just might need a different solution that someone who's in the trenches with that kid every single day may not be able to see at that time. So it's really a time to give kind of that counsel. And then if we're like, you really have tried everything, you've really checked all of the boxes, and this kiddo, it seems, really does need that more restrictive environment, then that recommendation is given to the IEP team. The IEP team then comes together with the parents to consider that least restrictive environment. That also ensures, so it's really ensuring that our students are more in those less restrictive environments than they have been necessarily in the past. So that's been something that's been a big focus. So yeah.
Is that related to, and this maybe it's completely unrelated, but is that kind of trying to be less restrictive in that effort? Is that some related to not having the Seas and Changemakers program at Montecito anymore? Or is that completely
not
separate?
related to
Okay,
that. So when we look at the Individuals with Disability and Education Act, which governs our entire special education program, the idea is that we are giving our students the most with the least support possible. So we want our students to be in an environment that has the largest number of gen ed peers as possible that will allow them to still be successful. Yeah. Because research shows that when our students, our special education students and our general education students are with one another, both populations benefit. Yeah. But what we know is that some students need that additional support throughout the day, which will increase the amount of time they're not with their general education peers.
And just to clarify, so within least restrictive environment, there's different levels. So in the state of Arizona, generally within the school system, if they're in one of our buildings, they're going to be a level A through D. So that's based on their percentage of time that they're receiving those services. So if a student's receiving 100 minutes a week, they would be a level A because they're in their gen ed classroom 80% or more. And then the levels go down. So that kind of
makes sense.
Helps to identify like the least restrictive.
Yep. Makes sense.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brendan. Thank you. And so then the last goal was changing academic outcomes. So some really big things that we've focused on these last 2 years were adopting supplementary curricula for our students. Something that we really struggled with is, I mean, in the life of a special education teacher, you're constantly pulling from different places to try to meet your kids' needs because you're focusing on all, in some cases, especially self-contained, you're focusing on all subject areas. You might be looking at and then students all on different levels in those subject areas with specific goals that may or may not match what the grade level standard is. So we were really excited to adopt 2 curricula for our most profoundly disabled students. So we have the STAR program, which is we use for our students with who are impacted with the communication difficulties. Often our students with autism are in those programs, our STRIVE programs over at Solano. That's a comprehensive and leveled curriculum, so it does kind of, hits all of our different subject areas, but with really specific leveled work that each kid can access. We also have Teach Town, which is another comprehensive leveled curriculum. We use that for our students in our RISE program, and then also our PACE program, which is the middle school equivalent of that program, our students with intellectual disabilities. And that's been really wonderful because what's wonderful about that is it is very, especially for the reading, it is age level appropriate, but it's developmentally appropriate as well. So let's say I'm a 6th grader, but I'm reading at a kindergarten level. I still am going to see a 6th grade level interest text, but it's going to be at my reading level. So it really speaks to the dignity of our students, which is something that was really important to us when we were determining what curriculum we would be selecting. And then we also have a variety of other resources. So we have adopted SIPS, which is a phonics and reading comprehension program that's used by our resource teachers and then also our lab classrooms. We utilize Learning A to Z. We have Unstuck and On Target, which helps with executive functioning strategies, which a lot of our students struggle with, that decision making and planning. We use Zern, which is helpful for all of our mathematics area. And then we also have some other resources that we've had longer than these past couple of years, which is Boys Town, which is what is used in the SEAS program. And then Touch Math is another resource that we use. And then Zones of Regulation, which talks about so that's emotional and behavioral regulation. So a lot of different things we've done. Kelsey Meyer, I have to say, did, now Kelsey Ryan, she got married, did so much of this work in really working with the representatives, testing out the curricula. With STAR, she actually got a grant from the state where she was working side by side with some of our Strive teachers, with state representatives coming in to help out with the appropriate implementation of it. So we've been really lucky to have her, and then also the support we've had from the state as well. And then the other really huge piece, we closed out the corrective action plan that had been developed in 2020 and 2021. So there was we are in 6-year cycles of monitoring, and that was the 2021 school year that we had a corrective action plan come from. That was focused on special education compliance, making sure that our paperwork was dated correctly and that we had the signatures we were supposed to have, but also making sure that the services were appropriate for the students' needs. We also got feedback about the need for additional professional development, and making sure that our meetings were in compliance as well. So what was great about that is by the end of the 2022 school year, with all of our documents actually had been submitted in November of 2021. So remember, we got the corrective action plan the end of 2021 school year, so like May of 2021. By November of 2021, we had submitted all of our corrections and we were closed out completely by the end of the 2022 school year. So that was within approximately 4 months, we were able to close out that corrective action plan. And that speaks hugely to Jessica Bailey, who is now a consultant for us, because she moved back to New Hampshire. But she was one of our teachers on specials assignment who really focused in on understanding the corrective action plan and helping us to develop an ongoing professional development plan to meet the needs of our teachers, and by meeting the needs of our teachers, meeting the needs of our students and our paperwork compliance as well.
Can I ask a question about, like, what's the compliance? What does that look like? What is the process when it comes to IEPs and the meetings?
Yeah, so that would be something I can send you, kind of what the findings were, because it's about 25 findings that were discussed. Some of the compliance issues we specifically had, though, which we had professional development. Our professional development focused on last year was the alignment of all parts of the IEP. So looking at the PLAP and making sure that those needs are aligning with what we're saying are goals for our students, and that those goals are represented in our service minutes to make sure that they're able to actually attain those goals. So that was a huge piece of our corrective action plan, and making sure that our compliance in the writing piece of it.
Okay, so I guess my question is, what processes do we have in place in our district to ensure that compliance?
Yeah, so we have two teacher on special assignments still. So what happens is when an IEP is completed, it then goes to Jessica Bailey. She has her eyes on every single IEP and evaluation that comes through our district. So then she compares that to our guidance from the state, and then ensures that that is correct in the draft, gives that feedback to the teachers make those edits, they send it back to Jessica to make sure that it's correct, and then they send it home, the finalized draft, with the family. There's been a huge focus, especially on PWNs, because that was something we got a lot of feedback on as well. So that's been something that has been ongoing professional development. But again, that's the same thing where it goes to Jessica, and then Jessica checks it. We also have an additional step for our teachers. The expectation for the PWN specifically is that they go to the school psychologist first. to have the first set of eyes, and then from there it goes to Jessica, and then back to the teacher. So we put in a person is a big piece of that check that you're asking about, and then we also have created guidance documents that are internal that we present to the new teachers at the beginning of the school year, and then we send them out every year as well. And then as needed, although Jessica is across the country now, she does have regular meetings with the teachers, especially our new teachers, prior to their first IEP meetings. Any teacher who wants to have that support of just like, please check my paperwork before I have this meeting with a parent can do that. Within the meeting, Kelsey Meyer or Kelsey Ryan will come side by side, and actually with our Strive teachers last year, in that percentage of teachers who were not fully certified, we had a large number. And so Kelsey was instrumental in helping write those IEPs and then also help present them to be a model for those teachers. Sorry, does that
Mariah-
address kind of the question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Mariah, what does PWN stand for?
It's a prior written notice.
Prior written notice. Okay.
When something is done in the SPED world, essentially special education world, sorry, we always have to document, here are the proposed changes. So after an IEP meeting is held, and we decide, this is what it should look like, there's a certain period of time before we implement that IEP to make sure that all of those edits can be made, and we're really representing what's best for the kiddo. Once that is finalized, then we send home this prior written notice that says, like, before we implement, here are all the things, a summary basically of what we're intending to implement for the student.
Okay, got it. Makes sense. Thank you.
It also documents any like refusals too. So if the district says, like, if the parent is like, I want you to do this, and the team comes back and says, hey, we don't have the data to support that, that's not in the best interest of the kid. That's also another piece of it too. So I do have one other question about PD. What does that look like for certified, and then what does that look like for classified?
Okay, so let's go into the next piece for the upcoming goals, because I will address that as well. So our focus areas for this school year is really focused on increasing that teacher familiarity and efficacy with academic curricula. So that's the answer to that first question. So for our teachers, that is really the focus of our monthly professional developments. So we've arranged directly with the companies to have coaches working with the teachers. The first ones are kind of just like, here's how you implement the curriculum. And then the later ones in the school year are really that side by side. Okay, now you've been doing it. What are those things you have, those like real life questions that you have that arise that aren't just covered in our general professional development? So that's really our biggest focus for our teachers this school year. For our related service providers, we have something called Continue Ed, which is a place where they can increase their continuing education. And during those times where the teachers are in professional development, they have that opportunity. For our classified employees, it's a little bit trickier because of the way that scheduling is done. But we've actually had our first round of professional development with our Crisis Prevention Institute's Nonviolent Crisis Intervention. So we're on our tomorrow is our final assessment day for our classified employees who have been receiving that training. So that's our restraint training, but it's more importantly our de-escalation training. So what are all of the things that we're going to try before we get to a point where our students are so unsafe that we need to do a restraint? Our goal is always to reach that point where the student is de-escalated prior to having to restrain our student. And so that's been something that has been a major focus to ensure that these people who are with our kids every day, all day in their hardest moments, they feel capable and ready to address those needs. And then the other thing, and we're working on the PO right now with the remainder of our additional funds that we got through COVID. We are getting memberships for all of our special educators and then also our special education assistants to the National Association of Special Education Teachers. What's wonderful about that is it has I'm going to say over 200, but I think probably over is more than 200. So over 200 professional development courses that are included within that membership. And so that provides, and that includes some professional development with like the relationship between teacher and also the paraprofessional, because that's something that typically isn't covered when you're in school. And so that's something where you're like living and breathing with that person or those people. And so really helping to create a strong team. We also do have in the Safe Schools suite of trainings. There are two really helpful trainings for brand new paraprofessionals that we are looking at. We've had a couple of our paraprofessionals view. It talks kind of just basics about special education and also that relationship between teacher and paraprofessional, and also what is appropriate for a paraprofessional, because sometimes our parapros will take on more than is appropriate for their role, and not in a way that's like that's to be negative. It's like they take all of this on, and it's like you're not the person who needs to be handling that, and we want you to take a step back so that you don't get burnt out and you're staying with us and serving our kiddos. So the second focus area we have is really getting into district level data analysis and really focusing in on the disproportionality when we're looking with student growth and discipline. So each year we do a discipline report that's due to the state, specifically looking at our students with special education. So we really want to start looking longitudinally because it's kind of been done in isolation in the past. So we want to start collecting that data to really see, is there a disproportionality, and what are we doing to specifically address that, if so? And then also looking at student growth. So we look at our students overall, and a lot of times our schools will look specifically at their special education population, but we haven't done that as a district. And so that's something that's a major focus, both looking at our AASA data and also looking at our it's not called benchmark, our FastBridge, thank you, our FastBridge data as well. Our third focus area is to align feedback. So I talked about that monitoring cycle through ADE. We're in our year one now, so we've come back to year one. And the big focus for this year is our In by 3, which is ensuring that our students with developmental disabilities, the goal is to identify them before they're 3 years old, because we know that if they were able to get earlier services, they're able to be more successful in the long run. So we're going to get feedback regarding our percentage of students who were identified by their 3-year-old, that 3-year-old mark, through our child find process. And AZIP, which is Arizona. I don't know. I'm not going to be able to tell you what it means, Ed. I'm sorry. But it's
early intervention program.
thank you. And other preschool related feedback. So our big focus this year is our preschool program. And our last one, and this is ongoing, is establishing and clarifying protocols and procedures and having them written down in accessible formats. So something that's been wonderful about Osborne, but is also makes it very difficult for people coming into Osborne, is we have this wealth of knowledge in our people. But then what makes it really difficult is when that person leaves, or we have a new situation, we don't necessarily have all of those iterations recorded. So that's something that we've really been focusing on these past couple of years. And then this year, this is going to be a really big focus for me, because we want to make sure that those teachers that we're retaining really feel like they have something to look at when they have those big questions that come up. So we're working on creating a comprehensive handbook to ensure that all of those needs are met. And that is everything. That is the end.
Wonderful. Questions. Yay. Thanks. Questions.
For preschool, what does inclusion look like?
Right now, we do not have a lot of inclusion. So we have 2 developmental preschool classrooms with an AM and PM class, 2 AM PM classes. We do have a couple of students who are in our community preschool. We have currently, based on a grant that our preschool has received in order to allow our students who come from a lower income environment to attend for free. There is the HQEL grant. That is a program that also encourages having more inclusion. So we do have some students in our community preschool. We really prioritize our students who, because we needed a starting place, our students who really just had speech needs. We really tried to increase our number of students participating in our community preschool, knowing that we have a district-wide speech therapist for our preschool program already. So I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I can get you those numbers of the number of students we have who are participating in our community preschool. And then we also have students who are some of those other levels where they're part day with us and then part day at another childcare facility as well.
And then I know it varies per kid, but for any students that we have, I know we have some students in private day placements. What does that transition process look like? And again, I know it looks very different from every kid, and not every kid is going to return to their home campus. But for those that, that's the goal, right? Mm-hmm. What does that look like? Do we feel like we have the resources? Do you feel like we need more resources?
That is an excellent question. And okay, so this is for real. Like, I had a meeting with all of my school psychologists today to discuss what it looks like to have exit criteria for our students who are in our most restrictive placements, and looking at what is the most realistic. So we looked at a couple of different ideas from our students who are going from a placement like the ACES, our private day school. What does it look like for them to move back to our level D program, our C's program? What does it look like for them to move back to our level C program, so our self-contained program at Clarendon and Canto or at OMS? And then what does it look like for them to move back to a level B or A, so they're with their gen ed peers most of the day? We don't have full answers right now. Right now, I don't know how familiar you are with the exit criteria that we have from our private day schools. Typically, the idea is there are 0 instances of X, Y, or Z. So 0 instances of aggression, 0 instances of verbally conflictive behavior. So using inappropriate language, that sort of thing, over the course of 9 to 13 weeks. And when we're looking at a realistic timeline, that doesn't feel realistic to our team. We want to make sure we know that kids have behaviors. We know gen ed kids have behaviors. Mm-hmm. So we don't think it's realistic to say you'll have absolutely nothing for 9 to 13 weeks before you return to our schools. So that's something that we're really working on, crafting kind of that baseline. It is tricky because it is different by each kid. But what is that kind of baseline that we can look at that's focusing on the duration, intensity, and frequency of the behavior, rather than just saying 0 all across the board, because we know that our kids are people and we want to account for that. So my answer is I don't have a full answer, but it is something that we are directly working on, and we were working on at 2 p.m. this afternoon, because we want to increase our participation on each of our campuses, because that is always our goal, to get our kids to the least restrictive environment possible.
Any other questions?
No questions. Just want to say thank you for the presentation. And thank you for all the work y'all are doing, because it shows.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm still learning. I was one of those kids that got pulled out, probably level 2, for my entire elementary school and middle school career. So very much appreciate it from the kind of that standpoint, but still learning from kind of all of the things that I didn't know were happening behind the scenes, I'm sure. So thank you so much for all of the presentation and for the education.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for answering all my many questions, but yes.
Dr. Robert's not here, so all the questions come to you, so thank you so much. Okay, moving on to our administrative reports since our August meeting, and this is really the big, of the start of the school year administrative reports from our schools and other departments. Any questions on our administrative reports? I just make a comment that I really enjoy reading all of them and appreciate the updates. It's wonderful to see everything that's going on. And look forward to continuing to read those reports as the school year goes on. It's just fantastic. I know it takes time to put them together, but they're very much appreciated. So thank you so much. Suspension report for the month of August. Any questions? I just had one. I don't know if I was reading the suspension report. I'm looking at the board packet at page 171. You see a good amount, not good, but an amount of suspensions for alcohol, tobacco / other drugs. I assume that's vaping. I don't know if Carol's here. She's hiding from me behind the podium. Is that vaping, Carol, or is that other stuff? It's vaping. Okay. And maybe I think it'd be good. It's something that is just a really difficult problem. I know, and it's just an ongoing difficult problem, not just for us. For a lot of people, but this is, probably for a future agenda item, but would love to circle back to that discussion and see what we can do to, deter. I've heard other districts talk about, like vaping detectors and other things like that. So maybe just circle back to that discussion, because it's just, one of those things that just I've observed over the last 2 years. And I'm sure it's been going on even longer than that. So, okay. Moving on.
I did have a quick
Go ahead.
question regarding suspensions. What is the I don't know if this would be a you question, Mariah, with our students that receive ESS services, how are we tracking, like if they're one of our students that's being suspended or something, is there a tracking system that is kind of streamlined for the district? Mhm. Okay.
Mhm. And if the answer to that question is, yes, then is that kind of brought into the decision making on that? Got it. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the absent report. Any questions? Moving on to substitute teacher report. Seeing no questions. Student enrollment report as of September. I always look forward to that report. It's a really important one. So if it's important just to look at trends, and that just an observation that we need to continue to work on keeping retaining our students up as they move into grades. That continues to be kind of one of the things the data tells me, and so probably a discussion to circle back to in the future of what we can do to continue to keep our kids here in the district as they get older. Okay, I won't have any other questions on that while Dr. Robert's out. OEA update. Appreciate the update. I don't know if there's anything you guys want to add on top of the update. No, Storm, Erica, thank you for the update as always. Last thing is on the school year tax rates. I'm sure there's no questions on this, but I just wanted to make a comment that you can see the tax rates going down. That's important. We talked about that at some earlier meetings. That's expected. And as people might ask you questions about our bond, which is on the November election here coming up, you'll be voting for it very soon. It's important to remind them it's not a tax increase. It's a continuation of this. It's going to keep those tax rates kind of at an even keel rate while improving all of our schools. So, and if they want any backup data, just show them those tax year rates on the agenda there. Okay. Moving on to action items, revision of the October board meeting schedule. Maybe we make sure I get the verbiage right here. But this is something we discussed at I believe, just the last meeting. Let me get to the right place on our packet. Okay. I think this had to do with some scheduling impacts here. The regular meeting falls on October 15th. And that's during fall break. Okay. And so we're moving the meeting to October 17th at 5:30?
I think the request was that we keep the meeting on the 12th, but it's just going to be to vote on the AFR because we
Understood.
have to do that before October 15th, but that we would continue, we would have our regular meeting on the 17th. So
Gotcha.
there's 2 meetings.
Okay, got it. So we're kind of bifurcating, but the meeting on the 12th is going to be pretty short, essentially one agenda item, virtual only. October 17th will be what will feel like our regular meeting, really, back here at 5:30. Okay. And this is just to formalize that change to the schedule that we discussed already. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion to approve.
I second.
And the time, just state on the record, the time for Thursday, October 12th meeting is...
Oh, it's asking for us to pick a time.
Okay, we don't have a time for the October.
We had talked about previously at our board retreat, doing it, I think, at 5:30 our time.
I think that's right. That's what I have on my calendar here. So does that still work for you, Luis?
Yeah.
Okay,
For the 12th?
for the 12th.
The 12th at 5:30.
5:30 p.m. the 12th.
Yep.
Cool.
So if somebody could make that into a motion with the date and time for both October 12th and October 17th, just so we've got it in the record.
I motion to approve a revision of the October board meeting schedule to include October 12th at 5:30 as a virtual meeting and Tuesday, October 17th at 5:30 as our regular board meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. It has passed. And moving on to board development. We have some meetings coming up. ASBA County meeting, October 16th. And then I'm going to go ahead and postpone our discussion because I know you just got your book out. I'd like Dr. Robert to be here. And I would also, prefer to have Violetta here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and postpone that. I hope that's okay with everybody. We'll cover that at the next meeting. Moving on to reflections and feedback.
Luis and I had a question.
Oh, yeah.
For the county meeting, we were wondering, can like multiple board members go? Does it have to be one?
Nope, multiple board members can go.
Okay.
So if you, I think for voting purposes, we have one vote.
Okay.
But for terms of attendance, it's an open meeting for all governing board members.
Okay. For voting purposes, do we just at the meeting decide who's going to say something collectively for us?
I think I haven't been to one of these meetings, but my understanding is that you can both speak. But
Well, we can
you
both
might know.
speak, but most of the time in these kind of meetings, they generally don't have a vote. This one will have a vote because it looks like we will be electing a new county director. So at the meeting, we can decide that. I have not received anything about who's going to be up for, election. So once that happens, if maybe even at that little meeting we're going to have, we can discuss that if they have materials out then. But otherwise than that, yeah.
Okay. I'm definitely interested in going.
Wonderful. More the merrier, I say. So yeah, please do. Okay. Moving on, let's go to first reflection/feedback on the meeting. And it feels like a really short one. I'll tell you what. I hope that's okay with everybody. I mean, I could certainly fill the time if needed, but I'm sure everybody would appreciate me not doing that. Let's go ahead and do reflections.
I'm really excited about our ESS presentation. Thank you, Mariah, for doing that and taking the time. Again, thank you for answering my many questions. That's obviously an area of passion for me. I think that oftentimes our kids with IEPs get overlooked, and they're such a big part of our community. I think a great reflection of a district is if their ESS programs are doing well, then their district is probably focused really highly on what's best for kids. So thank you for that. I also was really excited in our board updates to hear that we had all our ESS teachers as direct hires. I will say, as an ESS teacher, the quality that often comes with having district hires is much higher. And you also have more commitment, more buy-in, and hopefully staff that want to stay on long term in the district. So I'm really excited, and I know that's really hard to do. So now our goal is to really hopefully get all of our staff to be direct hires. So I know that's a hard uphill battle, but we got this. Thank you.
Luis?
A lot of what I was just going to say is echoing what Leanne said, but more just thank you for the work we're doing with our ESS kids, because that really does matter. I've seen it in districts where students do get just fall through the cracks, and it's not a good look, but we're doing great, and I want to thank y'all for the hard work you're doing.
Yeah, echo that, and it's wonderful. It's always hard to be the presenter on the day that the superintendent's out. There's no buffer there, so we appreciate you being willing to jump right in and do it. And just reflection too, it's great to see Elenia and to celebrate her. I mean, it's truly quite a career of service to this district, and she's just always been so encouraging of so many people to get involved and to step up and be engaged in leadership. And certainly that's true of myself. She's always been so wonderful and encouraging and supporting. And I know I'm going to keep calling her and asking her for advice. So it's just great. This is, the school year, also reflecting on that. We're in full swing. It's wonderful to see the administrative reports. It's going to get really busy. It already has. So it's nice to hopefully give you a meeting day where we can get everybody out of here at a decent hour so you can go see your families and have dinner. Moving on to future agenda items. I'll start with Leanne.
I know we just had a presentation at last board meeting about the, I believe it was the RISE grant for our Native American programs. So I'd just love, they may not be ready to give an update the next board meeting, but in a few board meetings from now, I'd love to hear more about how that's going, and then just learn more about our programming that we have for our Native students.
Wonderful. Luis?
Pretty sure I'm going to say the same thing as you, but it's just more key. You're starting to do more, what's the word looking for? Disaggregated data on suspensions.
Yeah. I think we did that. I think we should continue to do that, as we have. It seems like every year or so. Hear nothing else from Luis. On my side, it's agree with all of those. And maybe part of that, maybe it deserves a separate discussion, is that kind of just maybe drill down with the whole vaping issue. I think it's a big issue in our just society and community and with kids. So I'd love to kind of drill into that a little bit and look at what other best practices on deterrence. And I hate to see those kids not be able to attend school, but I understand it's a huge problem that we have. Other items, and I didn't want to bring this up earlier, but I just, this one's maybe not an agenda item, or maybe one of those things that can be covered by Dr. Robert in an email. Would love some data on our long-term suspension hearing officers or student discipline officers. We approved it as part of our consent agenda, a list of folks who are hearing officers. I tried to do a little research into those folks. Not a lot of information out there. I don't want to make any, judgments without the information, but just looking through the names and surnames, it doesn't really feel like those hearing officers who are making student discipline decisions reflect our community. I don't see a lot of, again, don't want to paint anything with a broad brush. Here, I'm looking for the data. It doesn't feel like those hearing officers reflect our community in terms of background, especially when you're making decisions on student discipline. When you're a hearing officer, it's important. I think it's important to reflect our community, reflect culturally. Having taught on the Navajo Nation, I can tell you that there are many cultural differences that come into play when it comes to student discipline. So just love some more information and data about those hearing officers, their background, and want to ensure that those hearing officers reflect our community. Other future agenda items as well, and maybe this is a separate call, but would love agenda item on the dual language litigation. We have been named but apparently we haven't been served. But we've been named in the by our superintendent of public instruction in his lawsuit. I try hard not to comment on pending litigation, but it is ridiculous to be sued by the superintendent of public instruction when you're a public school district. I'll leave it there, but I would love to have an update on that. Probably needs to be an executive session with our attorney. I attended the hearing that they had on Monday. Just yesterday morning, I guess it was. They had a hearing. Time flies. So I work downtown, so I walked down to the courthouse and went there and checked it out just to get a sense of the parties and the attorneys and the judge, what the judge was thinking. I don't think the judge, my personal opinion, I don't think the judge was impressed by the lawsuit. But still, would love that advice from counsel and to have a call when it's appropriate with our attorney there to get a sense of the strategy there. So last thing I'll say on that is love our dual language programs. We're not going to change them. They're wonderful. So with that, I think that's everything. Our future agenda items is over, and I'm going to adjourn the meeting in record time. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Okay. Yeah, you can clap. Yeah, you can clap.